We heard you, America.
Real America's Voice is coming to iHeartMedia.
Yes, Real America's Voice is now breaking through the white noise of the mainstream media.
Just download the iHeart app and you'll have all of us right at your fingertips.
Scan the QR code and start streaming RAV anywhere you want.
Real America's Voice, available whenever you need us.
It's never been easier to stay connected with the voices you trust.
RAV on iHeart means you can take us with you wherever you go.
This is huge. The truth on iHeart. Ready whenever you are.
From Charlie Kirk to Steve Bannon, Jack Posobiec to Grant Stinchfield, you'll find all your favorite RAV hosts in one place.
You can listen on Spotify, Apple, Pandora, or Amazon. RAV is now available everywhere you get your podcasts. All you need to do is scan the QR code right now.
Download the iHeart app today and get ready for Real America's Voice.
Scan the QR code and join the RAV movement.
Good evening, America. Happy President's Day. Welcome to the Monday edition of Just the News, No Noise. I'm your host, John Solomon, reporting as always from Washington, D.C. in the WiderFishCoffee.com studios. Widerfish Coffee is the official coffee of Just the News, and you can go right now to WiderFishCoffee.com and get a fantastic 10% discount on all of the great blends, their mugs, including the great Just the News mug. All you got to do is use the Just News promo code at checkout, and you get 10% off. All right. Normally, I turn to my co-host, Amanda Head, right now and ask for some headlines, but she's on assignment today, so we're going to handle it solo. She'll be back on the show tomorrow night. Let's start here. Just about 4 weeks into President Donald Trump's second term in office, the Department of Government Efficiency, headed by Elon Musk, has dominated all of the talk in Washington, D.C., and quite frankly, all across the country. That's because he's exposing that American tax dollars have been getting funneled into extremely unreliable system with almost zero oversight. Nobody seemed to know where all that money was going. Well, we now know a little bit more, and the amount of fraud and waste that Doge has uncovered so far has been nothing short of staggering. We've gone over a lot of it for you on this show in recent weeks, but Elon and Doge just have found something that he says, quote, might be the biggest fraud in history. That's what is going on with our Social Security dollars. Musk revealed on X today, there seems to be millions more eligible recipients for Social Security in the Social Security database than there are living Americans. That's right, tens of millions more. Take a look at these numbers he put out today. You got people that are 140, 150, 160 year old that allegedly are still eligible for Social Security benefits. Now, we got to sort through all that, but if the database ain't right, you can assure that the potential for fraud is, well, extraordinary. And that's just one of the many things that Doge is uncovering almost on a daily basis. There are now tens of billions of dollars of savings that Elon Musk has already found in his first few weeks on the job. Now, that leads me into our next big headline for tonight. It looks like the Biden Treasury Department coordinated with left-wing NGOs, those are nonprofits, non-governmental organizations, on tax policy as well as messaging. It's a story you can read all about on justthenews.com. Why is it so important? Because some of the money that's being cut that liberals have been crying about go to those very nonprofits that were coordinating with far left Democrats and liberal organizations. How about that? The Treasury Department taking its cue, writing its policies based on what a liberal NGO it was funding was telling them to do. You can check all those documents out. They were obtained by a Freedom of Information Act request from Protect the Public's Trust, a good government watchdog that we work with here a lot at Just the News. So go over to justthenews.com and check that over. It's pretty kind of cool. All right, one other story we're keeping an eye on in Toronto. A Delta Airlines flight from Minneapolis crashed upon landing in the snowy weather in Toronto today. It flipped over. 15 people are injured. You can see the footage right there. They're spraying the plane after it flipped over. Look at the wings. They're ripped off the plane. Pretty traumatic accident. So far, no fatalities. 15 people dead. All 80 on board are accounted for. But it's the latest in a long line of airplane crashes the last few weeks that began with that collision of a helicopter and a commercial airliner here in Washington, D.C. 3 weeks ago. A lot of concern about the safety of our airline system and our ability of our air traffic controllers to manage the traffic above our skies. Again, today's thing not involving air traffic control, but clearly something that we're all concerned about. We'll keep you up to date at justthenews.com. Finally, the Vatican announced earlier today that Pope Francis is suffering from what they called a complex clinical condition which requires a change in his hospital treatment due to an infection of his respiratory tract. A lot of people concerned about the Pope's fragile health right now. We'll keep you up to date on that as developments merit. All right. We're very lucky to be joined at the top of the show today by a congressman who's on the front lines of this Doge debate and also trying to fight through some of the resistance that Donald Trump is facing as he tries to reorganize the government and save you, the American taxpayers. One of the resistances coming from federal judges, and Congressman Eli Crane from the great state of Arizona, he's got a solution or two in mind how to deal with those judges. Joining us right now, the Congressman. Congressman, how are you?
Hey, John, thanks for having me on.
Great honor to have you on. I always love, because you dive right into action. You're always looking for solutions. You saw a judge who blocked Doge from accessing Treasury information, basically telling the executive branch, you can't look at your own data. You came up with an impeachment idea. Tell us about it.
Yeah, John, well, obviously, here's the deal. You have activist judges that are trying to block President Trump's Article 2 powers to make sure that the laws of the United States are faithfully executed. And, I've gone to war myself. I've never seen a fight, a battle, or a war that's been won by individuals on one side looking around at each other, hoping that somebody was going to do something. And so, John, we drafted a resolution for impeachment. We're working with House legal counsel right now to get that back, hopefully this week. And then we're going to try and drum up support from our Republican colleagues. But Andrew Clyde from Georgia has also done the same, and I'm hoping other Republicans do it as well. But the bottom line is this, John. I don't care whether we stop these judges from stopping this administration, from ridding our federal government from fraud, waste, and abuse. I don't care if it comes through, some expedited procedure at the Supreme Court or my resolution. The bottom line is, this administration's on a roll. They are exposing things to the American people that they have expected for a very long time. It's unbelievable the amount of fraud, waste, and abuse that is being, uncovered right now. And we cannot have, radicals in the judicial branch stopping the executive branch from carrying out their Article 2 powers.
Yeah, and I've seen you talk about this. You're not trying to punish a judge who just disagrees with you on an issue. You're trying to punish a judge because there's no constitutional basis for that ruling. They're basically telling the executive branch, you can't do what the American people hired the executive branch to do, right?
Think about that, John. How would, if President Trump put you in charge of the Treasury and you were blocked access to the payments that were going out of the Treasury or to the data that you needed to conduct oversight and make sure that that agency is running correctly, how could you possibly do your job? Yeah. John, you and I both know, and your audience knows, that the American people, understood that Elon Musk was running with President Trump. And one of the big through lines of President Trump's 2 terms now has been to rid the swamp, drain the swamp. And that is exactly what they're doing. They're well within their constitutional authorities to do it. And we know the play now that the Democrats are running. They don't control the House. They don't control the presidency. They don't control the House of Representatives or the Senate. And so they're going to use the judicial branch to try and block what this administration is doing. And I think what many of them have been tied up into when it comes to some of the fraud, waste, and abuse. And so I think it's amazing. But I think the only way that we stop these judges is through action, action, action.
Yeah. And Congressman, could I ask, given that there was some pretty politically active judges in some of the Trump cases, is it possible that when you're all done, when you review all the judges that you're looking at, that the number of people potentially referred for impeachment could be larger? Could you imagine a handful?
Absolutely, John. And that's why I said, I'm hoping that other members of Congress follow myself and Andrew Clyde with our own resolutions, because, I know the number's well over 10 judges right now that are trying to stop and block the Trump administration for doing exactly what the American people elected them to do.
Yeah, it's something we're going to be watching really closely. What's the reaction been among your colleagues? Do you have some support in the Republican ranks?
Absolutely, John. I mean, I think we all understand, how unique this opportunity is to actually, drain the swamp, get our spending under control, and get wins for the American people, and at the same time protect them from, the border invasion that we've had, and also end some of these forever wars that, President Trump said that he was going to get in there and end. And so not only are my colleagues excited, but when I go around and talk to the American people, they are extremely excited that for once they have a leader who's not just out there putting out political talking points, but actually is delivering on everything he said he was going to do.
Yeah, even the CBS poll this weekend showed that the American people, 60-70% of them see him tough, focused, and getting things done that he promised he would get to. Even if they disagree with him, they see he's getting things done. That's a rare moment in American political history. I want to talk a little bit about Doge and all the things that it's uncovering today. Tens of millions of people apparently active in the Social Security database who clearly are dead. They're 140, 150, 160 years old. You focused on one the other day involving Dr. Fauci and some taxpayer funds for transgender animal testing. I'm sure most Americans will say, we don't need to spend money on that. Tell us a little bit about what you found.
Yeah, we had a hearing and oversight that was led by Chairwoman Mace. And it was a hearing about some of the fraud, waste, and abuse in animal testing. And one of the most alarming things that we learned was that we'd spent $20 billion for, inefficient animal testing. But John, we found out that we were spending $241 million on, animal transgender surgeries to study, some of the treatments. And one of the crazy things was, John, is that we also found that one of the tests that was going on after giving these animals transgender, medicine and therapy was they were testing them for party drugs. And it was just unbelievable. We also found, John, that Dr. Fauci had authorized 95% of these programs. And so, long after he's gone, we're still realizing what Dr. Fauci was up to. And, it's not good, John.
Yeah, that was an amazing hearing and an amazing questioning that you and others did that day. We learned so much, and it helps us understand how we got into $2 trillion of debt every year with sort of expenditures like that. I want to turn to the war between Russia and Ukraine. An interesting dialogue going on tomorrow in Saudi Arabia with Russian officials and Trump officials. Some of the media's criticism is, well, he's only talking to one side, but that's usually how things start. You talk to one side, the other side, then you bring them together. How momentous are these efforts by Trump to try to bring peace in Europe?
They're super momentous, John. Many of us, for years have been saying that our position on the Russian-Ukraine war should be pushing for peace talks. And President Trump is finally doing that. We know he's a very good negotiator, and if that's his style to bring one, talk to one at a time, I have no problem with it. But I also love that Pete Hegseth and others have gone over to Europe and basically said, this is no longer a priority of the United States. We're not going to continue to spend American blood and treasure, on a war when you guys aren't doing your part. This is your priority. This is your issue. You guys need to step up and get some skin in the game.
Yeah, it was a powerful message, and it clearly hit the mark because there was a lot of reaction all week long from Europe, a lot of backpedaling, but it's something that needed to be said. Also, just the rescission of freedom in Europe. It used to be that Europe and the United States were the model for freedom, but Pete Hegseth really and others, Vice President Vance, put Europe on notice that, hey, you know what? You're going backwards. You look more like the Soviet Union. How important was that message to deliver?
I think it was extremely important, that we break with the traditional talking points, because the United States has always been about 10 years behind Europe. I think that's something that scared the American voters to death as they started to see censorship and, the invasion of our southern border, which we've seen in Europe for a long time. And so I think it's great what they're doing. And, I really hope that we can, come to some sort of peace agreement between Russia and Ukraine, because like I've said on your program before, escalating, a conflict with the largest nuclear superpower in the world is never wise.
Yeah, no, it's not. And the other thing we did, at least in the Biden years, is we drove Russia closer to China, which also doesn't seem to be in our interest. A lot of things that we're learning from the House about China. Are you glad that the American people are starting to realize how much China tries to undermine the United States and steal our intellectual property now?
Absolutely, John. It's one of many things that I'm glad that the American people are starting to finally realize about China. And this is something that I actually see, Democrats and Republicans, agree on to an extent. And so China has taken advantage of the United States and our foolish leaders for a very long time. And I think it's great that we finally have leadership that is not only willing to call them onto the carpet, but make sure that, we're not getting ripped off by them when it comes to trade, intellectual property, and so many other things. And so I think it's a great development. And, we'll continue to watch what President Trump and his cabinet does as they continue to move forward with China. Yeah.
One more measurement of the Trump effect, which is so widespread right now. Border crossings, illegal border crossings, down 90 to 95% since Trump was elected. Tell us a little bit about what you're seeing. And it seems like illegal migration may be going in reverse right now.
Yeah, John, remember, I think it was last year when we were told by Democrats that we couldn't secure the border unless we had that horrible, border bill. And many of us pushed back and said the president of the United States can do most of this without Congress. And we've seen within the last 4 weeks that was absolutely true, what we were saying. It was a lie what the Democrats were saying. And now it's time for, the Republican-controlled House and Senate to step up and fund Tom Homan, the border czar, and this administration with this Herculean effort that they have in front of them.
Yeah, in fact, you were one of the first members of Congress to call the bluff on that when Democrats first started to make that argument. I remember doing it right here on this show and on my podcast. Congressman, it's always an honor to have you on the show. We always learn a lot. We love your mettle, your toughness, and all of these battles. Great to have you on tonight.
Thanks, John. Appreciate it.
Really appreciate you as well, sir. All right, folks, we're going to take a quick commercial break. When we come back, we're going to take a look at how the new Trump administration is doing in the polls. By the way, in huge support starting to rally behind the president's stuff. Big data poll director Rich Baris is going to bring us up to speed on that right after these messages. Hey, America, the fight to restore our great nation is only beginning, and now is the time to take a stand, and Patriot Mobile is leading the charge. As America's only Christian conservative wireless provider, Patriot Mobile offers a way to vote with your wallet without compromising on quality or convenience. That's important, right? Patriot Mobile isn't just about providing exceptional cell phone service, it's a call to action to defend our rights and our freedoms. With Patriot Mobile, you'll get outstanding nationwide coverage because they operate on all three major networks. Now, if you have cell phone service today, you can get cell phone service with Patriot Mobile with a coverage guarantee. But the difference is every dollar you spend supports the First and Second Amendments, the sanctity of life, and our veterans and first responders. Switching is easy. Keep your number, keep your phone, or upgrade. Their 100% U.S.-based customer support team are going to help you find the right plan for you. Right now, go to patriotmobile.com/justnews or call 972-PATRIOT and get a free month of service with promo code JUSTNEWS. Switch to Patriot Mobile today and defend freedom with every call and text you make. Visit patriotmobile.com/justnews or call 972-PATRIOT. Welcome back, America. As we've been writing at justthenews.com, President Trump's approval ratings at historic highs, and it's not only coming from traditional Republican voters, a lot of interesting support lining up behind the president and his agenda and the people carrying out his agenda. Someone who has been studying this really well and really, I think, has educated the public a lot in the last couple of weeks, the director of Big Data Poll, one of my favorite pollsters, Rich Baris. Rich, good to have you on.
Hey, John, thanks for having me. It's always great to be here.
We love what you do. You get us behind the numbers. You get us understanding what's going on. All right, so he's been hovering between 54, 56%, 55%, I think, in the latest poll I saw. Who are those people that are so excited about what?
Yeah, that's the real story, John. All of those groups that we looked at before the election that were novel groups to support a Republican president, those are the ones that have maintained that number between 54, 55, 56 was our high for him. And those are younger people, black voters, Hispanic voters. They haven't budged out of a majority since he took the oath of office. So one of the most important things for me after the election was to see whether or not some of these groups that he made such inroads with would stick by him. And so far, they love what they see.
Pretty impressive. Pretty impressive indeed. There's an interesting generational transition going on in government when Elon Musk is reinventing government and shrinking government. It brings a whole new face and a whole new skill set to it. How is Elon Musk playing with those younger voters particularly?
Yeah, he's become the Democrats' boogeyman, and they have to figure out someone or somewhere to focus their fire. But the problem is the only real opportunity with Elon Musk is with older voters, and Democrats are trying to build a party for the future, are they not? Elon is the most popular with voters that are 18 to 29. Anyone who has a teenage kid or a kid that's a young adult, right? He's popular with this generation. All of them want a Cybertruck, right? They look at him, he's innovative. He's been a unique and important figure for that generation. They've heard a lot about his innovation, and they frankly kind of look up to it and appreciate it. So it's hard to really make that argument to make him the boogeyman with that age group. And by the way, that 18 to 29 is consistently Trump's strongest age group as well. So this is a real completely upside down situation that we're all used to in modern politics. Yeah, it really is remarkable. On the issues that Americans were looking for Trump to seems to have a check mark next to it. Legal crossings down over 90%. Shrinking government well underway. A lot of people still have that concern about the cost of eggs when they go to the grocery store. It's not something that can change overnight. Has President Trump done enough to address that issue? And how long will it take for the Trump agenda to make people feel like, hey, prices are getting better? Yeah, I think last Thursday he started to address that when he said, look, there may be some short-term pain and then followed by lower prices. He really needs to stay focused with that message and consistently remind people that, because this is not something that you can address overnight. It's not. It took Biden quite a while to, close the Keystone Pipeline right away. But gas didn't soar immediately, folks, right? The Inflation Reduction Act was passed one day, but inflation didn't spike until months later. So one of the best things he could do as well is, and this is just from some of the stuff we've tested in polling, is tell people, look, I'm going after the size of government, which is what drives inflation, spending too much. And that's what we're doing with Elon. That's what we're doing with Doge. So give it time and we'll get there. If he pushes that message, he'll be all right. But he's got to remind people that it does take time. That is his one vulnerable point. But he's got some time before it backfires on him, if it does at all. And the economy just isn't an instant. Just take. You're right. If you could just remind people he's doing the things that are going to make that clock run down to success, it's going to be the idea that we're maybe on the cusp of something that no possible other than Donald Trump, who said it was possible. A Ukraine peace deal or ceasefire. How voters who've been worried about in the world during the Biden years? Voters are over this. They're over conflict in general. One of the biggest problems for Joe Biden, we heard from voters in the polling, was, we're focused. We're focused on Ukraine. We're focused on the war in Ukraine, and I understand security, but what about the price of eggs, right? And that was one of Biden's biggest problems. If Donald Trump does end up ending this war, expect that approval rating to go even higher, because people are. John, that was the last generation. They were focused on security. We had terrorism first in the 21st century. And then we did look at Russia and the geopolitical atmosphere. And that was there's no other way to say it. That was the concern of prior generations. We earlier today discussed how voters have changed a lot, even since 2016. And it seems like Washington, they either don't want to acknowledge it or they're trying to ignore it and they're trying to just survive this period. This is a lasting change. Voters want something different. A peace deal in Ukraine, ending that conflict, is going to be a big boon for Donald Trump. So I would almost expect his opponents to try to sabotage it.
You're right. There's an irony that one of our oldest presidents is actually creating a generational change in America, both in the polling alignments of America, the political alignments of America, but also just in the face of government. We just have younger, more innovative people that are now the face of government. That could be a boon more than the Trump presidency, right? That could carry on for 10 or 20 years for Republicans if they ride that wave.
Oh, absolutely. And that should be their number one concern right now. Yep. Gallup last week actually released something about the ideological identity of the electorate, whether you're talking about Democrats or Republicans or independents. And they caught on to something we've been talking about for almost a year, which is that somehow this electorate is getting more moderate in identity when you ask them, are you conservative, liberal, or moderate? Yet their views on issues are getting more Trumpy or right? They're shifting to the right on immigration, on war, on economic policy, even social issues. And if Republicans can harness that and be seen the way that Donald Trump is seen by the electorate, then they have an opportunity to kneecap Democrats for a very long time.
Yeah, it's just remarkable to watch this change.
Roosevelt level.
Yeah, it really is. It's a tectonic shift in the plates that we haven't seen in shift in the tectonic plates that we haven't seen in so long. I want to focus on a couple of other things that I think people have on their mind. If you went back to last summer or last spring, there was some doubt about whether the American people would be comfortable with deportations. That seems to have rallied around 60-70% in the polls I've seen. Similarly, keeping men out of women's sports and the transgender issue, Donald Trump has won that narrative if I'm reading the polling data. What do you see?
I think that the focus on these, what they knew and maybe the media didn't understand and the Democrat didn't understand, were 70-30, 80-20 issues. Yeah. The focus on that stuff was brilliant because Democrats, if you take the transgender issue, they always tried to push this as a civil rights issue, while the American public never saw it that way. They viewed it as a mental health issue, to be frank. They really did. Immigration was, they're the kindest, most generous people on planet Earth, John, but they're allowed to have sovereignty in their country. Right. So we were just talking about that tectonic shift. That happened right underneath both establishment's feet, but Washington's feet, and nobody saw it. So last summer, when we did discuss whether or not they would take the images of deportations, I did it with a chuckle because, of course, they were going to. After 4 years, and even the New York Times reported it. More immigration than the period of Ellis Island. I mean, that was way too much for the American public to stomach, all without their consent, right? Yeah. So they're going to give Donald Trump wide latitude here. They are.
Yeah, there was one pollster I remember talking to consistently who told me all these things would happen, and you were right. Rich, you always give us some great insights, so you're always ahead of the curve on the trends in America. Great to have you on the show today, my friend.
Anytime. All the best, John. Thanks.
Yeah, we love what you do. Great, good work. All right, folks, we're going to take another quick commercial break. When we come back, we're going to get into all those resignations at the Justice Department with Article 3 project founder Mike Davis. Who's in charge, the president or the bureaucrats? I bet you Mike Davis will give us a good answer. We'll have that right after these messages. Hey, folks, did you know that American homeowners have over $32 trillion in equity? That's an amazing figure, but you know the bad news? Criminals are targeting it with a growing scam the FBI calls house stealing. Scammers can transfer your title right out of your name using a one-page document they file at the county. Then they can take out loans against your equity, even sell it behind your back. And the scariest part, you won't find out about it until collection or foreclosure notices start arriving in your mailbox. Now, that is something you don't want to have happen, leaving you, of course, when that happens, in a financial and legal nightmare. The best way to protect your equity is with Home Title Lock's exclusive $1 million triple lock protection. This service offers 24/7 monitoring, urgent alerts, and if fraud should occur, the U.S.-based restoration team will spend up to $1 million to fix the fraud and restore your title. So, when was the last time you checked on your title? If you're like me, the answer is never, and that's exactly why scammers are counting on you to fail. The good news is for 2025, Home Title Lock is offering you 25% off, and you also get a free title history report when you go to HometitleLock.com and use my promo code JTN25. Now make sure you check out the $1 million triple lock protection details when you get there. One more time, go to HometitleLock.com, use the promo code JTN25. Welcome back, America. One of the epic battles that Donald Trump and the government will fight over these next 4 years is who's in charge of the Justice Department. Is it the elected leader that Americans chose to be their president, or the bureaucrats that have long run free and overshot over at the Justice Department? Our next guest has been writing brilliantly on this. The latest flashpoint, the decision to drop charges against New York City Mayor Eric Adams. Mike Davis, from the founder of the Article 3 Project, did a brilliant article this morning on Fox News. He joins us now to talk about this debate and also where some of the critics are maybe off on the law. Mike, good to see you again.
Thank you for having me.
We love it. I love that article you wrote this morning. There's been this sort of narrative that, oh my gosh, Donald Trump and his attorney general or his acting attorney general, they can't tell the Justice Department what to do. Our founding fathers had a little bit of a different idea, right?
Yeah, so this Danielle Sassoon, she went to Yale Law School, and she's, she was the acting U.S. attorney for the Southern District of New York, and she got a lesson on the Constitution, a civics lesson. Apparently they don't teach the Constitution at Yale Law School, because she got to understand very clearly that the U.S. attorney for the Southern District of New York is not the sovereign district of New York. She reports to the Deputy Attorney General, who reports to the Attorney General, who reports to the President of the United States, who's elected by all Americans. and President Trump campaigned on the fact that he's going to end this lawfare and this weaponization, and that includes New York City Mayor Eric Adams's bogus prosecution by the Biden Justice Department for shaky corruption charges because Eric Adams got sideways with President Trump when Eric Adams complained about illegal immigrants flooding in to New York City. And so President Trump and Attorney General Pam Bondi made the policy decision that they want to drop these corruption charges brought by the Biden Justice Department against this New York City Mayor Eric Adams because they want to work with him to get illegal immigrants the hell out of New York City. And that is within their constitutional prerogative to do that. And if a career prosecutor doesn't like the president's policy directive and his lawful orders, too damn bad. He's the president of the United States. His attorney general reports to him, and his deputy attorney general reports to her. And Danielle Sassoon, despite what they teach at Yale Law School, reports to the deputy attorney general, or she did until she got fired.
Now, I think Democrats might have some amnesia because it wasn't that long ago when Democrats were upset that Jim Comey acted on his own without the authority of the Attorney General or the President in dismissing the Hillary Clinton charges. Have they forgotten their old arguments?
Of course. So this is what they want. They pretend like they want an independent Justice Department.
Right.
And what that means, think about how dangerous that sounds, that you don't have a Justice Department accountable to the duly elected President of the United States and his Senate-confirmed Attorney General and his Senate-confirmed Deputy Attorney General and his Senate-confirmed Assistant Attorneys General and his Senate-confirmed U.S. attorneys. They want these career prosecutors to pretend like they are accountable to no one, to give them this huge amount of executive power, this prosecutorial discretion, and they're accountable to no one. That's not how it works. It only works that way, it seems, when we have Republican presidents, because the Democrats run these offices. They run these U.S. attorneys' offices. They are the career officials who dominate the FBI, dominate Main Justice. So, of course, they want an independent Justice Department when there's a Republican president. And up until the Trump administration, you've had these weak, cowardly Republican lawyers who actually went along with that. And guess what? We're not going along with that anymore in the Trump 47 Justice Department. Emil Bove, the acting deputy attorney general, who is a savage, gave them a very important lesson on the Constitution.
Yeah, that letter was really something to read, and it was well cited, well versed, well researched. I want to clarify so people understand this. Our founding fathers intended that if a president wanted to achieve something bigger than a criminal prosecution, he could do that. The voters could dislike it and remove the president in the next election, but this was always envisioned that it was in the power of the presidency, correct?
That's exactly right. It's the executive power. Yeah. And guess what? The president of the United States is the chief magistrate. He's the chief law enforcement officer under Article 2 of the Constitution. No matter what federal statute says, it's the Constitution that controls. He is the chief law enforcement officer. He gets to decide himself through his attorney general and his deputy attorney general and his assistants and his U.S. attorneys whether to bring charges or not bring charges. Those are his decisions to make as the president of the United States. Now, President Trump has said that he's not going to make those decisions. He's going to have his attorney general and his Justice Department team do this, but the president has every right to bring charges if he wants or to dismiss charges if he wants.
Yeah, that's a really important part. It's just something people haven't heard in a long time, but it is exactly what our founding fathers intended. I have one last question for you, because it seems like another place where some schooling could go on soon are federal judges, who seem to also be telling the executive branch they can't take executive actions like checking their own payment system to make sure things are accurate. Early in the show, Eli Crane said, listen, he'd like to impeach a few judges or start the process of impeaching a few who are exceeding their authorities. Your thoughts on some of these judges telling the executive branch they can't do what the American people hired them to do?
So President Trump campaigned on the fact that he's going to bring bold reforms to the executive branch. He's going to hire Elon Musk and set up Doge and go after waste, fraud, and abuse. And the American people like what they heard from President Trump, and they gave him a broad electoral mandate on November 5th, 312 electoral votes, all 7 swing states, and President Trump is doing exactly what he told American voters he's going to do. And you have these activist judges, because Democrats didn't win the House, they didn't win the Senate, they didn't win the White House, so their last line of defense are these activist judges who think they are going to sabotage the president's Article 2 executive power under the Constitution. The president is not stealing legislative power from Congress. He's not stealing judicial power from the courts. He is exercising core executive branch power to look at, for example, Treasury payments to make sure that there's not waste, fraud, and abuse. An activist judge told him he couldn't do that. He is using his core executive power to bring home USAID foreign service officers serving overseas. You had an activist judge tell him he cannot do this. This is a radical assault by these activist judges. This is sabotage on the presidency, and the Supreme Court of the United States needs to step up on the emergency docket and end this immediately, because if these courts lose their legitimacy, they're going to lose their jurisdiction and they're going to lose their funding.
Yeah. Do you think impeachment's ultimately the answer, or do you think the Supreme Court could fix this before impeachment?
If these activist judges keep taking off their judicial robes and climbing into the political arena and throwing political punches and sabotaging the president's Article 2 executive powers to hire, to fire, to make workers transfer, to make them come home, to look at waste, fraud, and abuse, if these judges keep doing that, they should be impeached. They're on fair warning.
Yeah, that they are. Mike Davis, we always love having you on. We get a clarity of the law every time you speak to us. Such a great honor to have you on tonight. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Folks, go check out the great work he does at the Article 3 Project. Really one of the great legal minds in all of America. All right, we're going to take a quick commercial break. More on the border security with former Border Patrol agent J.J. Carroll right after this. Stay tuned. Welcome back, America. As we mentioned at the top of the show, illegal border crossings more than year over year since Donald Trump took. It can be done, even though Democrats told us without their magical legislation last year, it wouldn't be done. Well, Donald Trump proved them wrong. Our next guest is a former Border Patrol agent. He's the author of a great new book out called Treason, the Biden administration's strategic and malicious destruction of America's sovereignty. It's a great book. Go check this out. It's fantastic. Joining us, Jay, great to have you on the show.
Thank you very much for having me. This is such a huge topic, right? Because everything is tied to the invasion of our southern borders the last 4 years.
Yeah. You served in the Border Patrol. You know exactly what went on these last 4 years. Was there any doubt in your mind that what the Biden administration was ambitious?
The Biden administration did everything they could to destroy America's sovereignty. They did it intentionally, strategically, and purposely. I watched my last year in the United States Border Patrol was Joe Biden's first year, so I watched the 94 executive orders cascade down, destroying the most secure border in the history of America. And to prove my point that this is treason, is Donald Trump took him 24 hours to shut the border down. We're down to 97% of border crossings from the height of Joe Biden. And Joe Biden's Border Patrol and his ICE, do you know they arrested between 5,000 and 20,000 a day, every single day for 4 years? They allowed this to happen to America. And we are now beginning to see the manifestation of crime. We're seeing the demographic shift. We're seeing everything that they wanted to do. And they were very successful in achieving that.
Yeah. One of the things that I think you do a good job explaining, and I think the American people are still coming to grips with, which is this system didn't just start and end with Joe Biden. He set all the motion in place, but getting these illegal immigrants into the interior country so they would be hard to extricate later involved a massive conglomerate of nonprofits and other people getting into the middle of this, sanctuary cities, sanctuary states, Democrat political leaders and those things. Talk a little bit about the infrastructure that Joe Biden used to getting places where they're now hard to get out.
Well, the engine to the machine is the NGOs. Without the NGOs, this cannot happen. You are looking at Congress has admitted to 30 million people across the border in 4 years. The government, Joe Biden, admitted to almost 17 to 18 million. So if you want to split hairs, you can go ahead. But I'm telling you, 30 million people crossed the border illegally. How did that happen? How did they get 30 million people from 180 different nations out of 195 nations on planet Earth? Well, they did it from international NGOs through the through the UN, USAID. We paid international NGOs to move millions of people onto the border, cross the border, and then we paid through FEMA and DHS through FEMA, paid domestic NGOs, which they're blurred between the international and domestic, and moved 30 million people into America. And when you go through the statistics, the data of who these people were that crossed in the border, let me tell you, you are looking at millions of criminal aliens. You're looking at least 1 million terrorists. It's called special interest aliens, SIAs. You can split hairs all you want, but our government purposely destroyed our sovereignty and put us in the most dangerous position in American history. And we're still in that danger zone right now as we speak.
That's an important part, right? We're just in the beginning part of processing and starting to jettison some of these bad actors from our country. It's going to, everybody thought, well, Tom Homan sounds great. 1 million people on day one, but that's not how the system works, right?
No, it's not. And I will say I am the biggest Tom Homan fan. I think that he is the exact perfect man for this job. Absolutely. But I don't believe that he is getting the right personnel, enough manpower. And in order to change that flow, that apparatus that Joe Biden created, because what Joe Biden through Mayorkas created was Herculean effort, and I applaud them. I actually applaud them for their treason. They were incredibly successful. So it's going to take some time to take their apparatus and turn it around and then begin the flow of millions of people through that apparatus back into their home countries. But it has to be done. 1 in 6 to 1 in 7 residents living inside our walls are illegal aliens. 50 million people in America are illegal aliens. Do the math. We will not survive this if we do not take over the demographic change that Biden threw onto us. And I'm not talking about a racial demographic change. Like I stated, 180 nations out of 195. This is a demographic shift from citizens to non-citizens. And when you look at the birth rates of Americans, we are in a negative, meaning we are not reproducing. And you look at the birth rates of people that we're bringing in people that have birth rates 4 to 5 times the native births of Americans. It's a bad math problem, John, and we are on the losing end of it.
You make that brilliant. Question for you on those responsible for getting when job and that acceleration, that velocity going. Is Congress the next place they got to go? They got to get more money from Congress?
I think that's what it has to be. And I think you have to outfit the border czar with the people he needs. He needs lieutenants. He needs people to drive this mission. You have the president behind Tom Homan. Now you have the border secure, and it's going to be completely locked down probably within the next couple of days, I would guess. Yep. So all the attention needs to be turned inward to gather the illegal aliens out of our country, and we need to make it as hard as possible for them to live in America illegally. And guess who benefits the most from all of that? Besides total Americans, all the legal immigrants that came here that are looking for they're looking for the American dream. They're never going to get it when you have all this cheap labor underneath. Who else is going to be hurt? Inner city minorities are getting devastated, and small rural towns like Springfield, Ohio, Aurora, Colorado, towns in Indiana and Pennsylvania, I can go on and on. They're being decimated by this incredible demographic upheaval.
Yeah, their tax base was never set up to deal with this. No. So we're spending them into oblivion. It's just remarkable. JJ, congratulations on a fantastic new book. Everybody's talking. Reason. Go read it. We'll get real soon to talk more about it. All right, we're going to take a quick commercial break. When we come back, we're going to talk to a Missouri lawmaker. Create ICE program. Is it a good idea for other states as well? We're going to talk about that right after these messages. All right, commercial break. A lot of great ideas have emanated from states. In fact, it was the primary line of defense for freedom during years. David Gregory is proposing creating state ICE-like agencies to try to help feds. I guess right now, Senator.
Thanks so much for having me.
All right, this bounty program that you have to help people find illegal immigrants for the feds.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So obviously we know, thanks to Biden and Harris, we have no idea who's coming into our country, who has come into our country, that is, right? We know we've caught people on the terrorist watch list. We've caught drug traffickers, human traffickers. We cannot sit back and wait for these people to commit violent crimes before we actually act. And that's exactly what this bill does. It's a two-part system, but it essentially creates a state's ICE program. That's all it does. We take the current federal system in place and we move it to the states so that the states can collaborate, can assist and supplement ICE, and at the same time step up and protect themselves when we get administrations like Biden.
Yeah, the 9/11 of see something, say something, and this extends ability to have everyday people kind of harness their citizenry and help us find some of these people who may be in Missouri since you proposed the bill.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, we've got a hotline, again, just like ICE. ICE has already got a hotline in place with a reward system. All we're doing is taking that and supplementing. We're augmenting it here to the states. And it's all hands on board. I mean, we've got a serious problem here, and that's what it's going to take to solve this problem. We can't just sit back and hope that President Trump can do it all himself. While I think he actually could, I do want to assist, and a lot of folks want to across the country. We want to step up. We want to use our resources to assist the federal government in finding dangerous illegal immigrants.
That's the idea. Now, the blue cities in Missouri where people don't just have to support the mission. How does Missouri deal with that, and how would this bill potentially advise obstruction of the ICE efforts and the state efforts?
Yeah, that's exactly right. So this bill also establishes the framework that requires cooperation from ICE. So we're hearing it. It's actually still on ICE's website. They are asking, in fact, begging for support from state and local law enforcement. And that's exactly what this bill does. It requires our law enforcement to cooperate. Everything goes through our Department of Public Safety. Law enforcement officers are required to produce information when requested. And then we've got this central hub ready and willing to dispatch law enforcement and bounty hunters to effectuate arrests.
Yeah, that's important. So you don't have to wait for ICE, which might be overwhelmed in other parts of the country. Your law enforcement, your bounty hunters can go get those folks and then turn them to ICE. Correct?
That's right. I mean, but to be clear, our constitutional protections, there are constitutional protections even for illegal immigrants, and my bill does adhere to those protections. So what happens is that there is an actual investigation through the Department of Public Safety by law enforcement, and only if it is determined that someone's illegal, a warrant is issued by a judge, a warrant for that person's arrest, and then only then can a police or bounty hunter effectuate that arrest. So we don't have bounty hunters running around deciding who they want to arrest or who they don't want to arrest. You can't have normal citizens saying, hey, you, show me your documentation. All those things are just the liberal media lies, and it's not working. People are starting to get real supportive of this, and we're gaining a ton of traction.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing, pretty novel. Other states saying, hey, I'd like to adopt a state?
Yes, we have. I've been reached out to, I have probably had over 20 states contact me asking about how it works and how it's going. I know it's made it's become public in Mississippi, both the DA and another state representative. I don't like to disclose exactly which states simply because they want to unveil it at the time that they believe best. But actually, yeah, you're going to start to see a lot more public acts, if you will, soon.
Yeah. One of the things that came up, I've got about a minute left, just real quick. One of the things that have a lot more they could on for locations that make sure. Is this administration been more cooperative? Is there any legislation free the flow of information to speed up lawful arrests?
So I'm not privy to that. I don't know what our law enforcement knows, and that's a good thing, right? This isn't for the public to know every specific thing, but I can tell you this, I'd bet on it, and I'd bet big that this current administration is doing everything they can to crack down on it. And it's what the folks want. It's what they voted on in Missouri. It's what they voted on across the country. Yep. It's why our current president won and won so big. So I'm excited to see what our current president does. But of course, we only have him for 4 more years. What are we going to do after those 4 years? Who's going to be in office then? We cannot sit back and wait and hope that we have another outstanding president like President Trump. We've got to step up and do something about it.
This is our generation's moment to do it. An honor to have you on. Congratulations on all the buzz at your legislation outside of Missouri, everywhere around the country. Good to have you on tonight. All right, folks, it's hard to believe, but we wrapped up an hour that quickly. We're going to hand off to our good friend Grant Stinchfield for the next hour. We'll be back tomorrow. Good news, Amanda will be sitting alongside me again. We got a lot of great things ahead for you this week, including some good exclusive reporting. Until then, God bless. Have a good night.